If you watched Michigan Outdoors back in the 50s and 60s, you know this guy. You saw him every week with the magnificent wildlife stories. Howard Shelly, good to have you here, Howard.
I'm delighted to be here.
Howard, of course, was on Michigan Outdoors. Let's see, Mort Neff started it in 1951, and you joined him when?
I went with Mort in March of 1957 and was there until August of 1972 when I retired, but I don't mean I retired because we've been traveling all over the world ever since.
You've still been out hunting and goose hunting this fall?
A lot of it.
Can I ask you how old you are?
80 years old last Tuesday.
80 years old. Congratulations. That's terrific. And still hunting and fishing like crazy.
I wouldn't miss it.
And enjoying, you, of course, you winter in Texas.
Right.
What are the deer like in Texas? You see the bucks we have here on Big Buck Night?
There's nothing like this in the whole state of Texas.
Is that right?
They've got some good racks, nothing in the way of palmation like you'll see here, and from an enormous size, the ones you have tonight, unsurpassed.
Like I'll be darned. I would think that big state down there, it always seems to be greener other places, but we have it, huh?
They brag about it and they talk about it, yes, and they've got deer, but they do not have deer like we have. Our deer are, on an average, I would say, is good 10% heavier in weight. Not the palmated antlers again. Big spikes, but in numbers, lots of them, but not Michigan deer.
Oh, boy, yeah, we have them up here. Now, when you started with Mort Neff back in the 50s, do you remember when the first Big Buck Night was?
Well, he had started the show, Big Buck Night, 2 or 3 years before that, perhaps in 54 or maybe 55. And he scored just a little bit differently than you do today, but still we had some great contests. I honestly can't say that I recall anything quite equal to the 2 big ones you've had tonight.
Yeah, that we have coming
Those
up
are
here.
Enormous.
I guess so. Well, Mort scored the inside spread,
right.
And we do the outside
That's
spread.
That's right, and I always felt that it should be the outside spread. It's still a part of the antler.
Well, here we are. Did you ever think you'd be back on a Big Buck Night after Michigan Outdoors went off commercial TV?
Never thought of it. When Bob invited me back in September, when we bumped into each other, I was just like a kid with an all-day sucker. Delighted, pleased, and happy.
Well, that's great. And I tell you, Howard was noted back in those years for your magnificent wildlife films you put on. And let's take a look at one. In fact, you've had it on our show about 5 or 6 years ago. The name of that?
The Deer That Comes to Dinner. We had a call from this Mr. and Mrs. Farmer, as I shall call them, over near Vermontville, just 25 or 30 miles west of here. Come on over, Mr. Shelly. We have something of interest for you. So I drove over, arriving well before daylight that morning. And there, as Mr. Farmer went to the barn to milk, feed the cattle, wandering around the barnyard was this last spring's fawn. Now, the deer was never tied up, never shut up, had free run of the countryside. It would follow the farmer around, and among all things that was strange, it made the perfect pet for their big boxer dog. Where you'd see one, invariably you would see the other. So I just made it my business that morning to try and have my camera at the right spot at the right time and see what would happen in the way of a story.
Was this raised as a fawn?
It just came in wandering from the woods one day, and from then on just stayed around the farm buildings, but in the afternoon it'd go back to the woods, next morning it'd return to the farmstead.
Amazing.
Now, Mr. Farmer goes to the granary, and when you see that young deer hop around right there, you know what's coming up. Mr. Farmer comes out with a half-dozen years of choice kernel corn, and how the deer does love that. And that actually leads us into the title of our film, The Deer That Comes to Dinner, because after he has his chores done, the farmer goes to the house. When the deer looks through the window like that, you better get the back door open because he's ready to come to breakfast. And he comes moseying right into the house. And of course, the lady that supplies the food, he must go greet her first because he knows that within a matter of minutes, there'll be a choice food item for him. Now, you know, when our children come in the house, they have dirty shoes and dirty boots, but you never need worry about that in regards to our friendly deer. His feet are spick and span clean. Now, it's just about right. The bowl of dog food has been mixed, and there we see our 2 friends, friendly, never arguing. I want mine first. No, you can't have it. I'm going to have it next. No friendly. It's just good, plain, well, 2 pets together. eating and eating as you see them. And then as the next course, how about a slice of juicy apple, and how that deer does love it. You'll note a little mar on its right eye. In its younger days, it got caught in a barbed wire fence. Then it moves into the living room in front of the mirror, because you see, this young doe, there won't be too long till she's interested in a young buck, so she wants to see that she's looking just right. And then finally, back to the kitchen. Well, here you see the big boxer. He's tired out already. He lies down for a rest. Don't you hurt your buddy there with that sharp paw. Then the deer, too, will lie down momentarily, but only for 3, 4, 5 minutes. Never going to sleep, always alert. And after it was there for less than 5 minutes, as one might suspect, it arises, and then when it goes over to the kitchen window and looks toward the outside, that is it. You better get the front door open. She's ready to go outside. And that's the story of how our deer came to dinner.
Well, that Howard, is a classic. Bob Garner never gets tired of seeing that one.
He told me that he takes a peek at it now and then, and I can't deny it. It's been one of the best films I've ever made.
Well, Bob likes to compare notes to see what that deer had for dinner and see if he approves of that menu. But that was a classic. But you know one thing about that film, though, Howard? People sometimes get the feeling that deer are just so passive. You've seen the other side of deer, haven't you?
That is for sure.
I want to show you a clip here of a buck that started off to be a tame one that the DNR had to confiscate. Watch this.
They get rough.
Not every white-tailed buck is like Bambi. Like any wild creature, even a gentle species has cantankerous individuals. This small buck was originally a semi-tame buck fawn that the DNR confiscated in a rural area because it was chasing kids at a school bus stop. With this attitude, what kind of personality did this buck develop? Here he is with his antlers removed because of the danger he presented to DNR employees at the Rose Lake Wildlife Research Station. Normally, when a buck's antlers are removed prematurely, the buck will have a complete personality change. Usually he'll become quiet and even sullen. His feeling of power and status are gone. But not this bruiser. If anything, his antler loss seemed to spur him on for a battle. It's possible for hunters to encounter bucks like this in the field, and with 750,000 hunters in Michigan's woods and waters in November, it happens.
Have you seen that side of a buck before? Up close? Have you had any encounters with bucks?
Not like that exactly. I have seen a few that were 1.5-year-old bucks that come September and October started to get real cantankerous.
They do change their personality.
Definitely, and you've got to be very careful, especially if you have young children around.
Okay, now you haven't worked big buck night since 15, 17 years, something like
1972.
that. 1972, okay. Why don't we give you a chance to interview our next hunter coming up, and this is a hunter with the deer with the longest time. What's the longest tine you've ever seen on a deer?
Oh, 11, 12 inches.
Oh, take a look at this one, Howard.
Well, this is Steve Nolan from Fremont, and tell me, where on earth did you get this animal?
Hillsdale County, down by the Indiana border.
I have never seen any set of antlers that had the long tines like this one has. This must be 12, 14 inches.
Just a tad over 14.
And how big was the deer?
It's only 180 pounds.
That's a good-sized buck. And what did you shoot him with? Slug?
12 gauge Remington.
Dropped him right there?
4 shots.
4 shots.
I happen to know, Howard, get this. Steve didn't know it was a buck.
Oh.
He was trying to fill his doe tag. Is that right, Steve?
Yes, it is. I was walking crossroads through a cornfield, heading back for lunch, and looked down one of the rows, and I saw a deer standing in crossways in the corn there, and its head was behind one of the rows, so I decided might as well shoot, maybe I'll get lucky. And I shot once and looked down the next row, and it was running away from me, and all I could see was horns, and it was knocking down 2 rows of corn with its horns as it went, and I put 3 more slugs in from behind before he went down.
Man.
Now, I'll bet you're going to have this mounted so you can look at it every day the rest of the year.
You bet.
Look at that 14-inch tine.
Never have I seen anything quite like it.
Isn't that incredible, Steve? You're one heck of a lucky hunter.
Thank you.
Golly, thought it was a doe. We'll kick off our 40 and up club here with a 17-point buck. It has a 24 3/4 inch spread for a score of 41 3/4. Russ Way Brandt, congratulations on this buck. This is terrific.
Thank you.
You got this up? You're a Sault Ste. Marie native.
Sault Ste. Marie and hunting and detour.
Okay, now, did you get this buck from a swamp? You know, you see these dark racks like this and you think of a swamp buck. Is this a swamp?
He was right at the edge of the swamp. That's where he spent all his time.
Your form says you got this on the second day of the season.
Yeah.
The second day of the season was the worst day of the year.
Yeah.
It was a terrible storm. There were hardly any hunters out.
It was one of my better days.
Man, right in the middle of the swamp, though.
Yeah.
You got in where these bucks are. So what was the situation? Were you sitting?
I was sitting in my blind, my normal spot, but the weather wasn't fit for man or beast, and he probably knew that. So he figured it was a clear day.
Now this happens to be for those Upper Peninsula hunters who have hunted old Slewfoot. Russ Way Brandt got him. These are the front feet from this deer, and you can see the one evidently was broken or something when it was a young deer. You've been tracking this deer for how long?
5 years now. We could recognize his footprint in the scrapes and after a sighting.
Yeah, you can see that.
It's just
an odd left front footprint there.
Correct.
But there's his 2 feet. Old Slewfoot has succumbed to Russ Way Brandt on the wall. I mean, a magnificent buck. What does it score on the Boone and Crockett?
Green scored at 170 to 180.
Wow. Huge rack. Congratulations, Russ. Old Slewfoot. Roger Hanselman from Mount Clemens took this buck, took it bow hunting. It's the biggest buck we have here on Big Buck Night with a bow. And you took this on what day, what part of the season?
It was the 5th of November, first weekend in November.
Now, you live in Mount Clemens, but you hunt. This is another southern Michigan corn-fed bruiser. You count the points on it, we have 20 points all the way across that are an inch or longer, and the outside spread, I believe you measured from this side to somewhere over in here, and we got a 22-inch spread on that. That's a terrific buck. You hunt a lot.
Yeah.
You're a veteran hunter.
I try.
Bow and gun. Tell me about this buck, which is probably your biggest.
Oh yeah, definitely my biggest. Well, I'd sat out there all morning and didn't see nothing. We were going back to the house, and my cousin decided, let's push this little swamp here. So he come through the swamp, and I was waiting at the other end.
That's a gun hunting technique.
Yeah, he said we probably won't do no good with our bows, but we did.
But what the heck? And he came running by you, walking by you, what?
He come walking out of the swamp. Well, a little 8-point come out first, and I missed him. I hit a tree instead. But then about 3 minutes later, he come walking out, and when I pulled my bow back, I spooked him. He took off running.
But you had to make a running shot?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. You must have been a little excited for all your deer hunting and all the years you've put in and all the bucks you've taken.
A little is not the word for it.
Is that right? Well, I tell you, that's a terrific buck. The biggest taken with a bow so far. Congratulations on that. Roger Hanselman, a terrific buck.